So, hello and welcome to this interview with Alan. I know a lot of you guys have asked some questions and have some questions for Alan. So I've tried to collect them and we'll try to get some answers from Alan here. So Alan, thank you for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure, Mikhail. It's nice to be back. It's unfortunate we're not live this time, but I have been getting a number of emails and questions from some of your viewers, so that are members of the Facebook group. So please keep those coming. You can contact me directly at alan@cabralgold.com, and I'll, as Mikhail said, I'll do my best to answer your questions here.
All right, thanks. Let's begin. The first one is why has it been so quiet for the last 4 months? No news releases or updates for the plans of 2023?
Yeah, look, that's a very, very fair question. The essential reason, Miguel, is because we've curtailed the drilling. And we've curtailed the drilling to save money. Now, from about the middle of last year, obviously the market started moving downwards and dropped precipitously, and the implication of that, as share prices all started to move downwards, including ours, the main implication for us on that one was, with that market, was that it became very, very difficult to raise money, very difficult. And so in those sorts of conditions, market conditions, you then have to turn your attention to conserving cash as best you can. So that's the main reason there hasn't been any news release. We have been working diligently. As I think most of you know, I'm the biggest shareholder in this company. I have $2.8 million of my own money on the line here. So we haven't zipped off to the Caribbean and started drinking pina coladas for 4 months, I can tell you that. So look, we've been very, very busy. There hasn't been a lot that we can say. Most of the time over the last few months the vast majority of time has been focused on 2 areas. The first one is financing. We raised a little bit of money in November, and then we got into tax loss selling season, and obviously some people decided to exit the stock and pushed it down even further. So raising money has been top of the agenda. We've made a lot of headway in that regard, particularly in the last few weeks. So I think you should expect to see some news on that pretty soon. The second thing that we've done a lot of work on, and again, I don't have any, there's very little I can say publicly about this right now, but we've been doing a lot of internal work, and we continue to advance this internal scoping work that we've been doing on these gold in oxide blankets. So the next step for that is the completion of a pre-feasibility study, but that is all dependent on financing, as are the rest of our plans. I know that one of your questions that Miguel told me is what are the plans for 2023? I'll try and give you a bit more definition on that. But basically, guys, everything boils down to having enough money to get things done. There's a lot of things we'd like to do. There's a lot of things we are doing. We have been very busy, but we've had to be very, very careful about how we've been spending money.
Okay, yeah, and you talked about the financing right now, and the need for raising money to execute, and a lot of the questions has also been around that topic.
Yep.
How's it going? I mean, you said that you are making progress.
Yeah, we are making progress. Look, the market has improved a little bit since December. December was an awful month. It has improved. It's definitely not come roaring back. There is a little bit more money available. Investors, fund managers, individuals are a little bit more amenable to investing in our sector, the junior exploration sector, and so it's a little easier to raise money. Nothing's easier. I wouldn't. Perhaps easy is the wrong word, but it's improved. The market has improved a little bit. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, Mikhail, that we'll be able to get something done here reasonably soon. So, as I said, we've been working very hard, and we've had a lot of meetings. I've just been in Miami at a Minds and Money event where I had a lot of meetings with investors. There's a lot of interest.
Okay, great. And that answers one of the questions in terms of what you've been doing in order to raise the awareness and to get some money into the project.
Yeah, I as I said, I have not been sitting on a beach drinking pina coladas or playing golf or anything like that. I've been working hard to make sure that we're adequately funded.
All right. And there's also a question in terms of what is the strategy considering the low market cap combined with the need for cash. How do you see that?
Well, look, as I've said before, the strategy basically remains unchanged. I mean, in previous calls that we've had with this group, I've outlined the strategy, which is basically for us to get these oxide blankets into production as quickly as we can, and we expect those to generate sufficient cash to fund the ongoing exploration of the whole project. And I think we could. So that's the plan. Now, as I said, we've got to get a pre-feasibility study done. We haven't taken that decision yet because we haven't got the money to complete it. I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks we will have, and that's the idea. Now, if the market turns significantly, like it did around about this time 2 years ago in 2021, and the share price goes up, and as I said, the share price in 2021 went up from 10 cents or 9 cents or something to about 85. We'll raise a lot more money at higher levels. Now, mid 2021, we raised 11.5 million as an equity issue, and so it's quite conceivable that we may be raising that sort of money in a few months' time. And if that is the case, then obviously we would do a lot more diamond drilling in the hard rock granite material in order to increase the overall resource base. So the resource that we had done at the end of September by SLR, has come up with a certain number. It's given us some great insight in terms of how we can add ounces. SLR, as you know, Mikkel, is a big engineering firm that is, I think it's fair to say, relatively conservative. They've just been hired by a company, and you can look this up. You sent me the link about Clean Air Metals, where they were hired by Clean Air to do a revision on the resource, and in all likelihood, their revision is going to result in a decrease of 20 to 50% in the actual contained gold in that resource. Now, we hired them initially, so they didn't do a review. They did our resource, and so they're a conservative outfit, and there's a lot of upside to the existing resource. So in terms of what the strategy is to get this oxide blanket material into production as fast as we can, generate sufficient cash to allow us to self-fund, so then we will not be going back to the equity markets in the future, raising money regardless of where we are in the cycle. It's particularly, to use an English expression, galling for me, and by that I mean really sickening for me, to have to go, having put out all these fantastic drill results over the last 2 years, made all these discoveries, and having to raise money at these kind of levels. It's a little bit upsetting, to be perfectly honest, because we've advanced the project. Now, but the other flip side of that coin is, even though it's upsetting, it is a tremendous opportunity. If you guys pull up the Cabral share price graph, look at 2021 and what happened. Nobody was interested in buying not just Cabral, but junior exploration stocks at the beginning of 2021. They weren't. Our share price, as I said, was 9 or 10 cents. Well, if you wanted to buy it a few months later, it was at 75, 80, 85 cents. And so I think we're at the bottom of the cycle right now. As I said, we have an excellent gold deposit done by a reputable but conservative engineering firm, in my opinion. And there's tremendous upside on the project.
All right, and another question around this: what are institutional investors telling you with regards to the proposition of investing in Cabral?
By and large, they're very positive. Obviously, some of the institutions basically sit on the hands during market downturns and just like us, conserve cash and are very, very careful. But I've just, as I said, come back from Miami. There are a number of institutional fund managers there. I talk to these guys on a regular basis. Approximately 50% of our shareholders are institutions, and people have been very, very positive. I mean, these guys understand that markets go up and markets come down. You can make 10 times or 20 times or 5 times your money by investing in junior exploration companies like Cabral, but you have to accept that there are large swings in the market, and not panic when the price of these companies drops significantly. Now, a lot of people are watching this, and I know that many of you, or if not most of you, have invested in Cabral at significantly higher levels. I myself have bought stock at higher levels. Okay, now to that I would say the fundamentals of this company are strong. We have a good resource base. We have enormous upside on the resource base. We're very excited about the possibility of getting these oxide blankets into production. The project next door has just been funded to the tune of $500 million and is currently being built. It will be the 3rd biggest gold mine in Brazil, and we're right next to that. I'm the biggest shareholder, having put $2.8 million into this. We've made a number of new discoveries. So the fundamentals of this company remain unchanged. The price has dropped precipitously, but as I said, I think that represents an incredible opportunity. The gold that we have in the ground is valued at just $13 an ounce in the ground. If you look at the way deposits in Brazil and similar jurisdictions were valued, mid 2021 and during the higher points in the cycle, it's not unreasonable to consider these things being valued at $50 to $100 an ounce. And of course, that was prior to us having G Mining come in. So mid 2021, the project next door was sitting within Eldorado Gold and was paralyzed, and had been paralyzed for 10 years. And then they came in and bought it at the end of 2021. So yeah, I think institutional investors are largely positive. They're starting to now invest. I think a lot of these guys recognize that there is a massive opportunity right now, that many of these companies, most of these companies in the sector, including Cabral, are on fire sale, and they're starting to be selective and select the ones with strong fundamentals. And I think Cabral Gold is one of those.
All right, and how's the current cash position and monthly burn rate?
We have just under $1 million currently in the bank. That's sufficient to take us through to June. Obviously, as I said, number one priority for us is to raise some more money, and that's what we're focused on.
All right. And actually, there was a question regarding that you got employed by Westward Gold as a technical advisor.
Yeah, I wouldn't say employed. I'd say I am a technical advisor. And Westward Gold is a company that's run by a couple of friends of mine, Colin Moore and Andrew Nelson. Andrew used to work for Cabral. They're younger guys. I like them, and so they asked my opinion on technical opinion on some of the projects. As you guys know, I've got a PhD in gold now. If you're worried about how much time I put in Westwood and one or two other smaller things, it's a tiny fraction of my overall available time. And I work 24/7, guys. So I don't down tools on the weekend. I'm the largest shareholder in this company with $2.8 million invested. So if you're worried about where I'm spending my time, consider that for 1 microsecond. So,
right.
So yeah, I mean, look, I'm, helpful just like we all do. We have a few other things, but these things don't take a tiny fraction of my time. So yeah, I don't think if you're a shareholder or a potential investor in this space, you should be concerned about it. Most people in our industry sit on other boards. Some wear multiple hats, but I'm laser focused on making Cabral Gold a success.
Yeah, and in terms of raising money, I guess a wide and good network is also important in the industry. So in that regard, there's also some positives to it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just like it is, any industry, the more people the more potential benefits you can get from that. So, I spend a lot of time talking to my peers, and I got a lot of friends who are running similar companies. Obviously, most of us are in the same boat. We're all raising money, we're all talking about, which institutions are now sort of starting to take meetings and which aren't, and stuff like that. So, I think by and large, most people try to be helpful of people they know. So it's positive. So and then of course the other benefits are projects become available. That sometimes through my network I found out there's a project X is available that could be beneficial. So there's all sorts of benefits to that continual networking.
Perfect. And in regard to the upcoming pre-feasibility study, can you elaborate on what kind of answers that will provide?
Yeah, well, as you know, Mikhail, in our industry, there are generally three steps that you would go through to demonstrate the economic viability of a project. And you would normally start with a PEA, which is a preliminary economic analysis. Some people would call that scoping study. That you can do a PEA based on inferred resources. Most of our resources in the oxide the vast majority are actually indicated resources, not inferred. But normally you do a PEA, then you would frequently you would step through a pre-feasibility study, which obviously gives you a lot more detail. You're dealing with indicated resources, so there's more certainty, for example, around the resource base. And then you would go to a feasibility study. Now, some companies don't go through all three of these steps, and it really frequently depends on the size of the sort of capital ask that you need to build the thing. If you're contemplating a $500 million investment, you probably are going to step through all three of these steps, or at least a preliminary PEA and a full feasibility study. In terms of our oxide material here, we've done a lot of internal scoping work already, even though it's not out in the public domain, which would normally be included in the PEA. And we want to sort of leapfrog that step because we've done the internal work and go straight to the pre-feasibility study, which gives obviously an added level of certainty around it. And in all likelihood, base a construction decision off that. Now, this is the operation in all likelihood will be relatively modest. It's not going to be the same size operation requiring $500 million of capex like G Mining are building next door to us. It'll be a lot smaller, but we think it could potentially be quite profitable. Now, the sort of answers it's going to give us, the pre-feasibility study will be, a detailed capital breakdown for the capex costs. It will give us a mine plan. It will give us a detailed operating costs and expected revenues. And obviously it will give us a sort of a net present value and rates return and all the rest of it. So it'll be a pretty thorough study. Obviously in parallel with that, we need to do a little bit more metallurgical work. We've done some met work. We've done metallurgical column leach tests on the MG deposit. The central deposit we haven't done yet, but looking at the material, it looks like it will leach very, very well, at least as good as MG, if not better. Now, I can't guarantee that will be the case, but just looking at it, it's very, very similar material, a little bit less clay. MG has a little clay in it, it's about 1% clay. But Central doesn't look like it has any clay at all, so it should leach even better than MG, but we'll see. So there's a little bit more work that we have to do in parallel. Whilst the PFS is going on, we'll need to do a little bit more drilling, probably about 1,000 meters of drilling, because about 20 or 30% of the high-grade material that we want to mine initially within this oxide blankets is inferred material. Most of it's indicated, but it's inferred. And even though the overall grade of this oxide material is only 0.5 gram, now that sounds very low, and most people would say, how can I get excited about 0.5 gram material? Well, when you contemplate that the actual cutoff for the oxide material is 0.13 grams a ton, you start to realize the significance of half a gram. Now, what that cutoff of 0.13 means is that the engineers, SLR, consider everything above that level of being potentially economic. So the costs are very low to mine that oxide material, Mikhail, because as we've discussed in the past, it's soft material, it's mud and saprolite down to 60 meters. So it won't require any drilling and blasting. It's developed on hilltops, so there's no stripping, there's no waste material that has to be stripped off the top. And so once you've mined this material, as I said, doesn't require drilling and blasting, probably just an excavator and a few trucks. Obviously, you don't need a big crushing and grinding circuit either, because Mother Nature has already reduced this material to mud. And so, so it would be very cheap to mine and cheap to process. So yeah, I think by the middle of the year, during the middle of the year, assuming that we can raise enough money to get the PFS done, we should have some answers. I think it's going to be a tremendously exciting year for us. It's going to be a transformational year. But again, look, I can't stress this enough. This is a company with a $20 million Canadian market cap, which equates to 13 US dollars, or about 16 or 17 Canadian dollars per ounce of gold that we have so far defined in the ground. Now, if that assumes no growth with the resource base whatsoever, that we won't discover another single ounce. As you know, Mikhail, that we've discussed in the past, we've made two major discoveries in the last 12 months at PDM and Mashishi. The Mashishi zone looks just like the MG zone and extends 900 meters along strike. We've got a lot of drill holes into that, but not enough to define a resource on it yet. Similarly at PDM, that's a target which is a couple of kilometers northwest of the central gold deposit. It's on strike. It's a major gold in soil anomaly. There's a blanket there. The primary gold deposit, we've got holes into that. We've got some very good drill holes into that, but there's not a single ounce included in the resource base right now. So, I think once you factor that 13 US dollars an ounce in the ground based on the gold ounces we've got so far, plus the exploration potential, plus the fact that I've got $2.8 million of my own at risk, which is a lot of money for me, and some of it's my wife's money too. So, as we know, that is, if I wasn't laser focused enough, I certainly am now. But I think that, combined with the fact we've got this major new gold mine about to come on stream in the second half of next year, immediately next door to us, I think all those sort of factors add up to a very compelling investment opportunity. This is a country, Brazil, where you can work 12 months of the year. There are major gold mining companies involved in Brazil already. Kinross's biggest mine is in Brazil. By the way, guess what they mine at Paracatu? They mine 550,000 ounces per year at an average grade of about 0.3 grams a ton. I think it's about 0.35 or something like that. And they make an awful lot of money from that mine. Kinross is here. Anglo Gold Ashanti, the second biggest producer in country. You've got companies like London Mining. You've got Equinox Gold. They have 4 or 5 mines now in Brazil. So there's a lot of people who are active in Brazil, and you can work here 12 months of the year. So I think some of those factors that I've just described make it a very attractive place to invest and work.
Okay, some really good information in there, Alan. Thanks for that. And could you provide us with like a path forward and a timeline for some of the things you just talked about?
Absolutely.
Maybe also talk a little bit about the upcoming catalysts.
Right. In the short term, Mikhail, it's a good question, and I will preface my comments again here, my concluding remarks, by saying everything is dependent on the amount of capital that we have access to or we're able to raise. But obviously the focus for us over the next few weeks is to raise additional funds. We're well down the path on that particular initiative. Assuming that we're successful in those efforts, we will commence work on that pre-feasibility study. That's obviously subject to board approval and having sufficient money to get it done. But we've We've had discussions with various engineering groups, selected one that we think would do an excellent job, and they're all lined up ready to go. So, as I said, middle of this year, probably July, maybe August time, we'll see how it goes. We should expect the results of that study, assuming that we have the funding and the board approval to proceed with that. That will then, if it's positive, we will then look to make a construction decision very quickly after that. So we won't go through the full feasibility. We want to have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed at the pre-feasibility stage. We are talking to a number of groups right now that could potentially fund the capex on that. And obviously that would not be an equity issue, not at these levels anyway, in order to fund that. So we're in discussions with various groups on funding that. When we wanted to start those discussions early, in fact, we started talking to groups last year because we want to know what they need to come up with an investment decision. What we don't want to do is get the pre-feasibility study done, hand that to potential financiers, and then say, okay guys, what do you think? And then they come back with a whole list of things that they need. Let's find out what the list is now, so there's no surprises, so we can quickly move straight to a construction decision, assuming that the numbers are positive. So that is currently a significant effort or a major focus for what we're doing. If funding permits, we obviously want to get back drilling on the main deposits themselves, because whilst it's going to be very important for us to get the oxide material in production as quickly as we can, the big prize here is actually demonstrating the real potential of this property, which is what we believe is multi-million ounce potential here. As you know, Mikael, this region, this Cuiú produced 10 times more placer gold than TZ did. So the amount of drilling we do in that effort and how fast we go will depend on how much money we raise.
And do you expect, if you're successful in building a small heap leach operation, that it will be able to fund the further exploration of the property?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that it will. Again, I can't make any promises, I can't make any guarantees, I can't speculate about costs, but that's the whole reason that we're doing it, so that we're not, as I've described this to you in the past, that I feel like we've been on a bit of a hamster wheel of raising money, diluting the capital structure, drilling, raising money, diluting the capital structure, drilling. And it's the same for 95% of companies in the junior exploration sector, if not all of them. The problem with that is that's all fine if the market is always on a high, because you put out drill results and everybody gets excited and the stock goes up and you raise money at continually higher levels. In reality, that's not what happens. The market swings wildly through ups and downs, and you find yourself, and we found ourselves as junior CEOs of junior companies, most of us have found ourselves in the situation having to raise money, even though many of us have had really good results during lows in the cycle. And so we want to step off that. We don't want to be held hostage by the capital markets in terms of raising money and suffering significant dilution because we have to raise money during market downturns. I'd like to step off that hamster wheel as fast as we possibly can. And I think all our shareholders would like to see us step off that too.
All right, thank you very much, Alan. I think that was all the questions I have. So if you have any last comments?
No, look, again, I would encourage anybody who has any follow-up questions for me personally. You can always email me. You can leave a message on the website, or you can email me directly at alan@cabralgold.com. And my message to everybody here is, look, it has been a very, very difficult few months. I can assure you we're working very hard to advance this company. We will advance this company. I think there is an enormous opportunity right now, given the current share price. Just pull up the share chart for 2021. You'll see what I mean. So fundamentals of this company remain strong. There are going to be challenges moving forward, but I'm very, very optimistic and excited. Actually, I have to say I'm excited by this year and the future of this year. So, take heart from the fact that we are working very hard. There hasn't been no press releases this year so far, but we are working on it, guys.
All right. Thank you very much for doing this. Bye.
Thank you, Mikkel. And thanks for organizing it. And please, if you're watching this, please drop Mikkel a line. He works very hard. He doesn't get paid for doing this. He's an interested shareholder, but he spends a lot of his time. And I'd like to thank you, Mikkel, for setting this up. It's very important means for us to connect with a lot of people.
All right, of course. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.